Hey everybody, today I'm going to be reviewing Donnie Darko. This was written and directed by Richard Kelly. This is one of those films that did not do well on its initial release, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. It was very low budget, and it came out very soon after 9/11, and movies that include plane crashes weren't exactly something that studios were pushing for in terms of marketing. But since its initial release, it's definitely received a major cult status, and it's a classic that really did appeal and still does appeal to the younger generation. And I see why. It's a very unique film. It's a very ambitious one as well, and for the most part, I think it delivers on its ambition. On the outset, just when you're looking at this film initially, I think what's most impressive aesthetically is just the style of it and just how you can really see how versatile of a director, as a creator, Richard Kelly is, because the film is so many things. It's trying to do a lot of things all at once. It's a psychological thriller. It's got lots of elements of surrealism, and it's kind of psychedelic at times. It's also science fiction, and it's a satire, has a lot of humor. And he can switch very seamlessly between very dark, surrealist horror and the comedy aspects of it. And sometimes he can do this all in one shot, and I think that's because he establishes a tone very early on that is quite kinetic. There's a pulsing energy to it, a flow, very unique angles, and I like the way that he messes with time, how he'll play something in slow motion and then speed it up. It has a dreamlike quality to it that is very removed from the reality that we know, where a lot of those rules can be broken. Everything is very rooted in the world, yet it's broad enough for you to be able to interpret the story in a lot of different ways. And it really does matter because, as I said, this film, Richard Kelly is very ambitious here. He's really tackling a lot of things, and for the most part, he's choosing to really give a literal interpretation of the ideas that he's presenting. I could sit here and talk about the film's logic. I could talk about all the things that are mentioned, tangent universes, time travel, and how that affects the chronology of the story. But I'm personally, as those are interesting things, of course, but I'm less interested in them from a literal perspective, because I like to instead approach the subtext, because that's the heart of the film and the ideas. And it's very interesting to kind of explore the logistics for sure. I mean, you can talk about whether the film is this or that, whether it is literal or if it's maybe all going on in Donnie's mind, because, he has mental illness, so we don't know. But the ideas in the film, explored through this sort of dream logic, which means that anything goes really, I find to be more interesting because, through Donnie Darko, we can kind of see Richard Kelly as a creator and what he grapples with psychologically and projects onto his art. This film, for me, is above all else a film that is trying to understand the emotional spectrum, and that there is a very key scene about that where they're in school and they're trying to fill in the emotional spectrum between fear and love. And the key is that there isn't just fear and there isn't just love, that there are all kinds of things in between. So you've got self-expression and creativity, the individuality that we crave. But there's also, of course, the loneliness, the pain, the confusion in the midst of a society that seems to suffocate that expression, that individuality. I think it was a great idea to have the central character be a teenager in high school, just because it helps to really immerse ourselves in the themes of the story that are more exaggerated, because as a teenager, obviously you tend to be more confused and questioning all kinds of things, and your emotions are always in limbo. Teens also tend to be kind of destructive as well, and that's a huge part of the film as well, and the one that is most intriguing to me, the idea of destruction being a form of creation, what you must sacrifice in order to express yourself. And that darkness is part of our natural development as people. Trying to get at something deep within to find our own personal truth, that often takes a lot of pain and confusion to sort out. Donnie understands this because he feels very lost in this society, and the society that we're depicting here is, of course, a very satirical one, as I mentioned. It's exaggerating the American way. And the interesting thing I think about satire is that when you draw a line between what is real and what is meant to be exaggerated, you realize that those lines often blur, and the satire isn't that different from reality. This film does take place in 1988, so the social and political aspects of the period are very integral into making that satire work. They talk a lot, especially in the beginning, they talk a lot about politics, and also just the idea of the 1980s and how that was sort of the rise of consumerism and conglomerates, materialism. It was just a lot more of a mainstream idea, and of course there are quite a few American flags in this film. And if you watched my review before, the last one I did, Easy Rider, I talked about how I thought that that was too heavy-handed, all of the American flag symbolism everywhere, but here I think it works partly because It is a satire. It's meant to be cheeky, so kind of that overt symbolism is kind of funny. It just feels more believable in this particular world. And the movie is just, it's really funny, honestly. It's a very dark film, but there's so much great humor in it. I love the Kitty Farmer character. She kills me. I love it when she wears that shirt that says "God is awesome." I kind of want a shirt like that, but only for ironic purposes. She reminds me of 70% of the adults that I knew in high school, and I also love the Patrick Swayze character as well. Very memorable role for him. But I honestly think my favorite performance in the film is the one given by Mary McDonnell, who is an actress that I just adore. She plays Donnie's mother. She's compelling in a way that only seasoned, mature actresses can understand. She understands less is more, and I think that that's a quality that is quite underrated in actors. I think she feels quite protective of Donnie because they have a very interesting connection. I think the two are more alike than they might want to admit in the film. They sort of think alike, and you see little hints of that here and there throughout the film. I love the scene where she's talking to her son, and he asks her, I think they're in his bedroom or something, and he asks her, how does it feel to have a wacko for a son? And her response is, it's wonderful. And that line could have so easily been laced with really heavy sentiment. It could have been cheesy, but you know, she delivered the line perfectly and it feels so sincere. It's a beautiful moment, a moment that kind of made me emotional. They're both smart people, wise in ways where they can really be self-aware about the world more than maybe other characters can. And Donnie, of course, himself is very precocious, and he likes to ask a lot of very interesting questions. He wants to know, what is destiny and fate, and does it even really exist? Are there other realities out there? Is the reality that we know relative to something else? In order for the character to make that full arc and be redeemed in the end of the story, he has to make a change, and in this instance, he has to restore the universes, the balance between the timelines, and he does that by sacrificing himself. Quite biblical ideas there, and I think that the way that it's pulled off is quite beautiful and kinetic. I like the word kinetic to use to describe this film, and I love the way that it has Mad World playing over the montage of all of these characters kind of sitting alone, having very personal, vulnerable, intimate moments. Throughout the film, we've seen all of these different people, all the different masks that they wear for the world, and this is this one personal moment where you get to see all of them kind of stripped back. When you look in the mirror and you face your truth, that's something that is often very painful to face, and you know, everybody hurts no matter who you are. The final scene is powerful, especially when you watch the commentary by Richard Kelly. He was inspired by a moment in his real life where a stranger just that he had never seen before waved to him, and he waved back, and he said he never saw the person again. It was a very quick, very sensory moment, but it was something that really stuck with him, and I think that that's powerful. And I like the fact that this little wave was between Gretchen, who's Donnie's girlfriend, and the mother, because I think that those two characters were the only characters that really saw Donnie for who he is, and they saw that he had potential. Yet now that the balance has been restored between the timelines, these two will likely never cross paths, and that's the insane thing about time, serendipity and existence. Lots of things to contemplate in this movie. I will say, if I do have some complaints, I do take issue with the fact that a lot of the ideas that Kelly is expressing aren't contained within the theatrical version. He does explore that a little bit more in the director's cut, but I'm focusing on theatrical because that's what most people have seen. And it's fine if you want to do outside research about a film. I mean, that's cool. But, you know, I think that the ideas, if you're going to make a film, you know, I think that the ideas that you really want to express need to really firmly be in the foundation, the core of the film. Otherwise, it just feels a little bit splotchy. We lose a little bit of cohesion in the intent of those ideas because we are ignorant to a lot of the information. And I have a firm belief that what's on the label should be in the tin, and I absolutely believe that in the case of films, but I do overall really like this film a lot. It has aged really well, and it does hold up beautifully for me. You know, I saw it when I was a teenager, and it's great as an adult as well. I love directors that are ambitious, and Richard Kelly certainly is that, and he really executed this film boldly with a lot of gutsiness. And I just think that even if you've seen the movie, you should watch it again. It's great. And that's my review. Thank you all for listening. All my social media information is below. You can watch more videos here, and you can subscribe if you'd like. Catch you next time.